All men make mistakes. Married men, we just find out about it first. Today, we're going to unpack this quote, and then we're going to see what it can do to help us become better husbands. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Husband's Coach's Corner, the podcast that teaches husbands how to love their wife every day and become better men in the process. I'm your host, Chris Scott, aka the Husband Coach.
Welcome back to another episode of the Husband Coach's Corner. Today's quote, pretty straightforward. I don't think there's going to be too many arguments or disbelief in the statement of the quote, but we're going to unpack it and see what we can learn as husbands to become better and find ways to love our wife every single day. Now, the reason why this quote is very true is because when you get married, your wife is more prone to being honest with you and upfront. When you're dating and you're not married, you're not living together, or even if you are in some cases, your girlfriend may not be willing to share how she's really feeling because it's like, I'm on to the next one. But in a marriage, when we get married, our wives, they commit to us. Now, I know that this is a general statement. Not every marriage is the same way. There are some wives that are afraid to tell their husbands some things. And unfortunately, that's your fault. All right. The truth is, if your wife can't come to you and tell you that you did something, you're not going to learn how to become a better husband because she's constantly walking on eggshells to stay away from you. And there's no benefit to that. Even if you think that there is, there really isn't. You just live in the same stagnant marriage, and your wife is drowning and suffocating because she can't tell you how she really feels. Now, on the flip side, there are some wives that are a little bit more aggressive and they don't care about anything that you feel or whatever. They just let you know. And this is why this particular quote is very true. Married men, we will find out if we made a mistake before a single man or someone who is just dating. So the first step, we know that we mess up, right? If you are a man walking on this earth, you have messed up. It could be something as simple as you forgot to pick up kids from the school, which I can't say that I've ever had that problem, but I have heard of this problem. Maybe you were supposed to cook one night and you didn't cook, or you were supposed to go and pick up something before you came home and you didn't. And then there's bigger mistakes where maybe you said something that you should not have said to your wife and you really hurt her feelings. And that could have caused a lot of issues. Bottom line is, we're men, we make mistakes. And I'm not condoning every single mistake that we make, right? That is not what I'm saying. However, it happens. We make mistakes and we have to learn how to overcome those mistakes in our marriages so we can show our wives that we're progressing, we're getting better, and we want to love her in a way that is genuine. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's going to happen. In fact, it happened yesterday for me. But bottom line, I'm not going to tell you about that. Bottom line, we are going to make mistakes, and it's okay. It's what we do after the mistake that makes or breaks our progression and our success as being a husband. So we got to ask the question, what do we do when we mess up? Are we confrontational, or do we ask questions to try and figure out what exactly led to this issue? You see, when we try to find out what led to the issue, then we're getting to the root cause, the underlying problem, the unmet need that forced us into this uncomfortable situation. I don't know about you. I don't like to make mistakes in my marriage, but I know that it comes with the territory. Once I realize what led to the mistake, I am a little better at not making that exact same mistake. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, and I don't expect any of you to be perfect, but the way that we get better is by working on the things that led to those mistakes in the first place. The next thing you want to look at when it comes to what did you do when you messed up is, how is this going to benefit or affect my marriage? One of the things that I've learned in leadership And being a husband, you are absolutely a leader. Whenever there's a problem, don't see it as just a problem. See it as an opportunity that is just waiting for you to discover and figure out how to overcome and be even more successful on the other side. If you've heard any of my previous recordings, you will have heard me say that problems in marriage and conflict in marriage is healthy. It's not a problem. What it is an opportunity for us to learn how to grow and become better at communicating with our wives in a loving, resonating way. So don't get all upset as soon as your wife gets mad at you or you make a mistake. Just say, okay, what can I learn from this? Because this is an opportunity for our marriage to improve. And when you look at it that way, not saying that you're going to run into making mistakes all the time, but it takes the burden off of, okay, I made a mistake. Now it's putting the ownership more on, how can I make my marriage better? How can this benefit our marriage on the back end? Now, keep in mind, you are not going to see the benefits right away in many of these situations. When we make mistakes, depending on how big or how small they are, they're going to take time to work through. And you have to just embrace the journey, because as you go down the path and you go through the journey, you start to get more clarity. And the clarity comes in the form of what led to this situation, as I discussed earlier. But it also comes into what is it that my wife is really, really upset about? And what is it that inside of me led to doing whatever this thing is? So embrace the journey and gain clarity. Observe. Don't get upset. Don't get frustrated. Don't beat yourself up. Don't yell at your wife. Don't do anything. Just say, okay, what led to this? And how is this going to benefit my marriage? And you start to get clarity on the long-term long game of your marriage. All right. Very, very important. So you have to ask the question, how is your wife reacting? Right. Does she stop talking to you? Does she just stonewall you? You do something, you make a mistake, and then she just stops talking to you. That, gentlemen, if you are tuning in for the first time, that is a problem you need to deal with, because if your wife doesn't feel comfortable with talking to you about something that you've done, you guys have some bad communication. And I'm not talking about like the exact second she finds out that you made a mistake or you did something, you messed up. I'm talking about a day, maybe even 12 hours later, like whatever an appropriate cool off period is, because obviously initial shock is going to lead to a little bit of withdrawal from you. However, if the withdrawal goes beyond a day, you guys have some unhealthy communication habits, and you as the husband have to be the leader to initiate that contact and lead your wife through the marriage as you guys come to the table and communicate. It is so important. Very, very important that you fix that issue in your communication should you run into that problem, right? If she stonewalls you for a few hours because she's upset, that's okay. That's okay. It's the initial reaction. But if it goes beyond that, then you have some serious work to do with your communication, and you may have to observe yourself. Is there something that I bring to the table or I don't bring to the table that is causing her to feel more comfortable with not talking to me? Because if your wife can't talk to you, she's going to talk to someone, and that leads to other problems down the line. So you want to make sure that your wife feels comfortable coming to you, even if the situation that she's about to talk to you is going to cause a little bit of tension, and hopefully you get to resolution in the end. The other thing you want to kind of pay attention to is, does your wife yell at you? Yelling could be a sign of deep frustration. And deep frustration means that there's way more than the surface level mistake that you've made that gets her into an emotional state that she has to yell at you. This is another bad sign for your communication life. Now, if it's the initial reaction, you did something and she just responds in yelling at you, okay. But if every time you try to sit down and talk about it, she starts yelling about that situation, typically you're going to see some old situations pop up in these conversations. Just ask me how I know. And that's where you're going to run into okay, this is something that is way deeper than I expected it to be. And that's okay, because now you get to go deeper in your marriage, deeper in understanding what's going on with your wife. And the journey may be longer than the simple mistake that set her off to start yelling at you. You may find that you have a history of hurting your wife in a way that is generally not received well by her. And I don't know of any wife that wants to be hurt. So no one's going to generally receive being hurt well. But there are some deep unmet needs and unresolved conflicts that in her mind, she's still in the middle of the battle. And you as the husband, you got to go in there and you got to pull her out. Take some hits and, show her that you love her and build that relationship. Build your marriage, build your confidence, build your influence. All right. So that way she can feel more comfortable with just having a general conversation with you when she's upset. There's going to be some emotions involved because women, they have emotions. And I mean, men, we have emotions. But that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong just because she gets emotional or that something's wrong for emotional. It's when there's the extreme yelling. That's where the problem comes in. What can we learn from this? Well, first, our wives, the more we neglect dealing with the mistakes that we make, the deeper the hurt is, and the longer we take to resolve the conflict, the more challenging it is for us to overcome these conflicts and these mistakes that we make. Very important that we learn how to deal with it internally and then go externally to our wife and come to amends and resolution in whatever this mistake is. Now, not all of the mistakes that we make are going to require a long, deliberate conversation. Some of these conversations are going to be, yep, you're right, my bad. And then you move on to the next thing, and both of you are genuinely okay. There are going to be some of those conversations where you have to go a little bit deeper. And that's where you have to be willing to say, okay, how am I going to, or you view this as this is an opportunity, and then you sit down with your wife and you guys actually work through it. Okay, so the drill for this week. I want you to think back to a time when you last messed something up. All right, think about it. You got it. Perfect. Write down how your wife reacted to the thing that you did. Okay, think about what you did. Think about what your wife did when she found out that you did that. Write down your response to your wife based off of how she responded to you. So the thing you did, what your wife did in response, and then how you responded to your wife. I want you to evaluate if you reacted good based off of the circumstance, or if you reacted in a negative way based off of the circumstance. If you think you did good, then write down a sentence or two that explains how you got to that conclusion and what it is that you think was good about that. If you didn't do so good, or you don't feel like your reaction was warranted or was any good, then I want you to write down a sentence or two that explains why you think that as well. All right. We're evaluating ourselves here, guys. This is so important to self-development and becoming a better husband. those sentences, you're like just thinking it through and articulating that out into words. It could even be bullet points. I don't care. But just going through that process is going to help you so much when it comes to learning what it is that you do on a consistent basis that offends and hurts your wife and ultimately your marriage. And then what I want you to do after that is, if you didn't do so well, I want you to write down a sentence or two on how you could have responded better. Okay? Because you've identified the problem, and now we need to say, okay, this is why I responded that way, but here's how I should have responded and how I could respond better in the future. Right? We can't get yesterday back, but we can absolutely lead and build tomorrow. So let's do that. All right. Now, here's the goal with this drill, right? We want you to work through things in writing. I already mentioned it. We want you to work through things in writing so that way you can really like sit with your thoughts. Men, we don't sit with our thoughts long enough. We usually think it and then we do it. But sit with your thoughts, because it's important that we learn about ourselves and the mistakes that we make so we can love our wives and build our relationships. So do that first. Okay. So we want to be able to sit with our thoughts, and that's one thing. But the other thing that this drill helps out with is getting you to a point where you can prepare for conflict prior to conflict ever happening. Because when you can sit with your thoughts and you can articulate and you can keep it in the front of your mind, okay, the last time that I messed up, I did this. This is how I want to respond the next time that we get into a conflict. And then conflict comes and it's like, okay, I know that last time I didn't do so well. Let me figure out how to do better this time. You see, you could learn something, but until you apply it, the truth is you never really learned it, right? Application leads to success. Learning something and just having the knowledge of it is good, because that helps you with your actions when you get into a situation. But the truth is, if you don't do well in the situation, then you didn't really learn anything. You just reverted back to the old method, which did not work. And you already know what results you get from that method. So if it wasn't good, stay away from it. Try something new and dare to be different in your relationship so you can better love your wife and do things that resonate with her and get her to love you in a very, very loving way. So there it is. That is the drill for the week. Feel free to comment in the video section down below. So thank you all for tuning in. And, it's always exciting when I get to do these video podcasts. I will be back here next week with another video podcast. So until next time, I want you guys to find a way to love your wife every day. Peace.